The Heather and Stone, a Scottish Tavern. Sleep Story. Close your eyes and let yourself arrive somewhere warm tonight. Somewhere the wind cannot reach you, and the cold is just a distant memory beyond thick stone walls. You have been travelling for a long time, and the road has been long and dark and wet. But that is all behind you now. You are here, you are safe, and there is nowhere else you need to be tonight. Picture yourself on a narrow road somewhere in the Scottish Highlands, far from any city, far from any noise that matters. The hills rolled around you for hours as you drove, great dark shoulders of land rising up against a pewter sky. And then the storm came in from the west, the way storms do up here, suddenly and without apology. The rain hit the windscreen in thick grey sheets, and the wipers worked furiously to keep up. The road ahead was barely visible, and then just when you were beginning to wonder whether you had made a mistake, you saw it. A light in the dark, a warm amber glow bleeding from the frosted windows of a low stone building set back from the road. A hand-painted sign swinging violently in the wind above the door. The Heather and Stone. You pulled in without thinking, because some decisions do not need thinking about. You simply knew. This was where you were meant to be tonight. You push open the heavy oak door, and the world changes. The noise hits you first, not loudly but warmly. The low murmur of unhurried conversation, the soft clink of glass, the creak of old wooden floorboards underfoot, and then the heat, the beautiful, enveloping, generous heat of a real fire, burning in a wide stone hearth at the far end of the room. You feel it on your face before you have even taken 2 steps inside. You close the door behind you, and the storm outside becomes muffled. It is still there, still raging. You can hear the rain hammering against the windows, and the wind groaning around the old building. But it is outside now. It belongs to another world. In here, everything is slow and amber and warm. You pause for a moment just inside the door and look around. The pub is small and ancient and perfectly itself. The walls are bare stone, the same grey stone the Highlands are built from, but softened tonight by the firelight and by the dozens of small details that tell you this place has been lived in for a very long time. Old photographs in dark frames line the walls. A set of antlers above the fireplace. Shelves of mismatched bottles behind the bar. Their labels catching the light. A chalkboard menu with half the items crossed out, which somehow makes it feel more honest. The ceiling is low and crossed with dark timber beams, hung here and there with dried flowers and old brass lanterns that cast pools of golden light across the room below. The floor is uneven flagstone, worn smooth by generations of boots, and covered in places with faded rugs of red and green tartan. The whole place smells of wood smoke and old timber, and something faintly sweet, perhaps a whiskey someone has just poured at the bar. There are perhaps a dozen other people in here tonight. A couple in the far corner, speaking quietly over a shared meal. 2 older men at the bar on high stools, deep in a slow conversation that has probably been going on for years. A woman reading by the window, her book propped against a half-eaten plate. Her dog curled at her feet in an absolute state of contentment. Nobody pays you much attention, because in a place like this, A stranger seeking shelter from a storm is not a remarkable thing. It is simply what happens. It is simply what the heather and stone is for. A young woman behind the bar looks up and catches your eye. She has red hair pinned loosely back, and she gives you a nod that says everything. Come in, sit down, you're all right here. You find a seat by the fire. You take your time settling. There is no rush here, no one waiting, no table to be vacated. You unwind the scarf from around your neck and drape it alongside your coat. You pull off your boots, which are wet at the toes, and tuck them close to the hearth where the warmth will find them. Small acts of arrival. Small acts of permission. You are allowing yourself to be here, fully, without reservation, without the background hum of somewhere else to be. The chair receives you completely. The armchair is old and deep and covered in a fabric that might once have been burgundy and is now something richer and more complex, worn soft by years of use. You sink into it with a long, slow exhale, and you feel the last of the tension in your shoulders begin to release. Your coat is damp from the walk between the car and the door, and you drape it over the arm of the chair to dry. The fire will take care of it. The fire itself is magnificent. It burns in a wide hearth of rough-cut stone behind a low iron grate, and it has clearly been burning for many hours already. The logs are substantial, whole sections of old hardwood, dark at the edges and glowing deep orange at their hearts. The flames move constantly but without urgency, leaning and swaying in slow patterns, throwing light across the stone surround and out into the room. There is a basket of fresh logs to one side, and a set of old iron tools leaning against the log. You hold your hands out towards the heat and feel the warmth move through them, into the joints of your fingers, up through your wrists and into the bones of your forearms. It is an almost physical relief. The kind of warmth that makes you realize, only in its presence, how cold you had become without noticing. You turn your palms towards the fire and then away, feeling the difference. The front of your hands warm and tingling, the back still cool. You do it again, slowly, just for the pleasure of it. The fire does not mind. It burns with complete generosity, the same for you as for everyone else who has ever sat in this chair and held their hands out towards it. Above the fireplace, the mantel is cluttered in the best possible way. A brass clock that has stopped at some point in the past and has not been corrected. A small ceramic figure of a Highland cow, rust red and shaggy. Its expression one of absolute indifference to all things. A few smooth river stones that someone must have brought in from outside. A candle in a bottle, the wax dripped down in long hardened streams that have been building up for years. A sprig of dried heather, pale purple, tied with a piece of twine. The barmaid arrives beside you and you order something warm. She recommends the mulled cider and you take her at her word. She disappears back behind the bar with the easy efficiency of someone who has worked here a long time, and you settle back into the chair and let your eyes travel slowly around the room. The storm outside is intensifying. You can hear it in the walls, a deep structural kind of sound, as though the building itself is bracing against the hills. The wind picks up in long sustained gusts that rattle the window panes in their old frames, and the rain comes down in waves, drumming on the roof above, running down the glass in thick rivulets that catch the firelight and turn it gold. You watch the nearest window for a moment. Through the rain-streaked glass and the darkness beyond, there is nothing to see, just blackness and the reflected amber of the room behind you. The storm has swallowed the hills entirely. Out there, the road you drove in on will be running with water now. The heather on the slopes will be flattened and soaking. The burn at the bottom of the valley will be rising. But in here, in the heather and stone, none of that is your concern. In the gaps between gusts, the fire crackles and settles, and the low murmur of conversation continues undisturbed. Nobody in the heather and stone is particularly bothered by the storm. This is the Highlands. Storms are simply weather. The older man at the bar says something to his companion, and they both laugh, low and unhurried. The laugh of men who have shared many evenings in exactly this way. The woman with the book turns a page without looking up. The dog by the window shifts slightly in its sleep, its paws twitching once, then still. Your mulled cider arrives in a heavy stoneware mug, and you wrap both hands around it and bring it close. The steam rises gently, carrying the scent of warm apple and cinnamon, and something spiced that you cannot quite name. You take a careful first sip and feel the warmth travel all the way down. It is exactly right. It is perhaps the best thing you have ever tasted, because you're cold and tired, and the fire is in front of you, and there is nowhere else to be. You take another slow sip and let your eyes rest on the flames. The fire has a sound that is almost like breathing. Not a mechanical sound, not a regular sound, but an organic one. The soft collapse of an ember, the sudden bright crackle of a fresh pocket of resin catching, the long low exhale of heat rising up through the chimney and out into the howling night above. You find yourself listening to it the way you might listen to music, not analytically, not trying to understand it, just receiving it. There is a particular crackle that repeats every few minutes, slightly different each time but recognizably the same. A sharp, clean sound from somewhere deep in the burning log, like a small door snapping open. You wait for it without meaning to, and when it comes, there is a small, wordless satisfaction in the hearing of it. The fire continues. The fire is well. The light it throws moves across the stone walls in slow, warm pulses. The shadows shift. The old photographs in their frames seem to lean slightly into the light, as though the people in them are straining to see you, though of course they are still, have always been still, fixed in their moments long before you arrived. You find yourself looking at one photograph in particular, a group of men outside this very building, judging by the door frame visible behind them. They are dressed in the heavy working clothes of another era, their faces weather-beaten and direct, squinting slightly into a summer light that fell on them perhaps 100 years ago. They look comfortable here. They look like men who knew where they belonged. You wonder about this place. How old is it exactly? When was this stone first cut and laid, these beams first lifted into place? How many storms has the heather and stone outlasted, sitting patient and low and warm in this fold of the hills, while the weather did whatever it needed to do outside? Hundreds certainly, probably more than that. There is something deeply comforting about that thought. The building does not resist the storm. It simply waits. It has always waited. It will still be here tomorrow, warm and full of firelight, long after the storm has moved on to somewhere else. You take another sip of your cider. The two men at the bar have moved on to a new topic of conversation. You cannot quite make out the words from here, just the cadence of it, the rising and falling of two voices that know each other well, the occasional brief pause, the murmur of agreement. It is the sound of a conversation that has no particular destination. That is simply the point of itself. Time passes differently in a place like this. You are not sure how long you have been sitting here. Long enough for the fire to have settled into a slightly different configuration. The logs rearranged by gravity and heat into new angles and new depths of glow. Long enough for the barmaid to have replenished the log basket without you noticing her do it. Long enough for the couple in the corner to have finished their meal and moved on to something warmer in their glasses, leaning closer together now, their voices barely audible. You have stopped thinking about the things you were thinking about before you arrived. That is what a place like this does, if you let it. The concerns of the day, the stuff of stump, the miles driven, the plans made, the small frictions and unresolved threads that follow you through ordinary hours. They have not disappeared exactly, but they have receded to somewhere beyond the light of the fire. They are out there with the storm, somewhere in the dark, and they can wait. Tonight they can simply wait. The storm continues outside. If anything, it has grown heavier in the last hour. The rain coming down with a kind of sustained, purposeful force. The wind finding new pitches in the gaps around the windows. But in here, none of that matters. The fire burns. The light is amber and soft. The old building holds. You feel yourself growing heavier in the chair. Not an unpleasant heaviness. The heaviness of a body that has been cold and tired and is now warm and safe and has finally, fully allowed itself to relax. Your legs stretch out a little towards the fire. Your hands, still loosely wrapped around the mug, have grown still. Your breathing has slowed without you deciding to slow it. It has simply found its own natural pace, unhurried and deep, matching itself to the rhythm of the room around you. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the rain drums on. You close your eyes for just a moment, and the warmth wraps around you like something solid. In the darkness behind your eyes, the tavern continues. You can still hear it, the low pulse of the fire, the distant murmur of voices, the occasional clink of glass, the steady percussion of rain against old glass. These sounds do not disturb you. They hold you. They are the sounds of a world that is carrying on perfectly well without your attention. A world that does not need you to watch it, or manage it, or understand it. It simply asks you to rest. And so you rest. The chair is deep and soft around you. The heat from the fire moves across your skin in slow waves, gentle and even and constant. The cider has left a warmth in your chest that has spread slowly outward, into your arms and hands, into the long muscles of your back. Everything feels loose and unhurried. Everything feels right. The storm outside is extraordinary tonight. You can hear it in the silences between the fire's crackles. that great heaving, oceanic sound of wind across open Highland moorland, the rain falling in curtains across the hills, running in fast cold rivers down the old drove roads that wind between the peaks. But the heather and stone holds firm. The walls are 3 feet thick in places, old stone set without mortar in some sections, the way they built things up here centuries ago, trusting the weight and the fit of the stone to hold everything together. And it does hold, it always has. You breathe slowly in and slowly out. The older man at the bar says goodnight to his companion. You hear the scrape of a stool, the brief exchange of warm words, the sound of a heavy coat being shrugged on. The door opens briefly, and for just a moment the storm rushes in. A cold, wet roar. And then the door closes again, and the room exhales. The fire flickers once, and settles back into its steady burning. The remaining man at the bar orders something quietly. The barmaid obliges. The woman with the book has turned her lamp down slightly, and seems to be reading more slowly now. Her dog still asleep at her feet, one ear occasionally lifting and dropping at some sound only he can hear. The fire needs a new log. The barmaid comes around from behind the bar with the ease of long practice, lifts a piece of wood from the basket, and places it carefully onto the grate. For a few seconds the flames dip and whisper, adjusting. And then they find the new wood and climb it, and the light brightens again, and the shadows on the stone walls shift and resettle into new shapes. You watch all of this through half-closed eyes, or perhaps you only imagine you do. Perhaps your eyes have been fully closed for some time now. It is difficult to tell. The boundary between watching and dreaming has become soft and pleasant and largely irrelevant. The fire pops once, quietly. The rain continues its long conversation with the roof. The fire pops once, quietly. The rain continues its long conversation with the roof. From your chair by the fire you can see the bar clearly. It is a beautiful thing, a bar at the heather and stone. Dark wood worn to a deep shine along the top, where hands have rested for decades. The gantry behind it rises to the low ceiling, lined with bottles of every shape and shade. The ambers and golds of whiskey, the pale straw of a good gin, a few dark bottles whose labels you cannot read from here. Each bottle catches the light slightly differently. Some are almost luminous, lit from within it seems, the liquid glowing like something precious. The barmaid moves behind the bar with the unhurried confidence of someone entirely at home. She is not performing efficiency, she is simply present, wiping a glass, replacing it on its shelf, checking something in the middle distance, with a brief practiced glance around the room. She notices you noticing the bottles and gives you a small smile, the kind that says she knows exactly what it is about that shelf that draws the eye. Above the bar, alongside the bottles, someone has arranged a collection of things that accumulated slowly over years, rather than being placed with any intention. A pair of old walking boots, retired from service. A framed piece of music manuscript, handwritten, the notes faded but still legible enough for the title to make out. A real and old one. A small tartan pennant, its colours dulled with time. A mounted salmon fly in a glass case, its feathers still bright, its hook gleaming. None of these things belong together in any logical sense. Together they are entirely right. There is a particular quality to the silence between sounds in a place like this. Not true silence. There is always something in the heather and stone, always the fire, always the building settling around its own warmth, always the storm reminding you, gently, of its presence beyond the wall. But in the gaps between these sounds there is a quality of stillness that is very old and very calm. The kind of stillness that has soaked into the stones over centuries. The kind that does not ask anything of you. You are very still now too. Your breathing has become something you are barely aware of. It moves in and out at its own pace, slow and even, barely lifting your chest. The mug in your hands is cool now, the cider long finished, and at some point you must have set it down on the small table beside the chair. Though you do not remember doing so, your hands lie open in your lap, relaxed and warm. The fire speaks in embers now more than in flame. The logs have burned down to glowing cores, deep orange shading to red at their centers, and the flames are lower and quieter, flickering occasionally when a pocket of trapped air escapes, but mostly just radiating their steady, patient heat outward into the room. The hearth is beautiful in this state, more beautiful perhaps than when the fire was high and dramatic. There is something about embers that feels like the truth of fire. All that heat, all that light, contained and quiet and lasting. When the barmaid comes to add another log, she does it quietly, with the practiced care of someone who has tended this fire through many long evenings and knows how not to disturb those resting nearby. She sets the new log down at the edge of the grate first, letting it catch gradually rather than dropping it into the center and sending sparks across the hearthstone. She waits a moment, watching the fire accept the new wood, and then she straightens and moves away, back to the bar, back to her quiet work. The flames rise slowly around the new log, working their way into it, and the light in the room brightens just slightly, just briefly, before settling again into its long and easy amber. The room has grown quieter around you. The couple in the corner left a little while ago, their voices fading into the storm briefly as the door opened and then closed. The woman with the book is still here. Though her reading has slowed to almost nothing, the book now resting face down on her knee, her head tilted slightly back against the high back of her chair. Even the dog has stopped dreaming. He breathes slowly, his broad chest rising and falling, his muzzle resting on his front paws. At the bar, the last remaining customer says something to the barmaid in a low voice. She smiles and replies, equally quiet. There is the soft sound of a glass being set down. You are aware of the storm the way you are aware of the darkness outside a lit window. It is there, present, even dramatic in its own vast and impersonal way. But it has no claim on you. Not tonight. Tonight you are inside and warm, and the fire is burning, and there is nowhere you need to go, and nothing you need to do. The storm can have the hills, and the moorland, and the narrow road, and the swinging sign above the door. It can have all of that. You do not need any of it tonight. What you have is this room, this chair, this fire. The warmth presses against you from all sides now. The heat from the hearth and the heat from the old stone walls that have been storing it all evening, radiating it gently back into the space. The air in the heather and stone smells of wood smoke and warmth, and the faint sweetness of the cider, and something older underneath all of that, something that belongs to the stone itself, to the centuries of fires that have burned in this hearth, to the generations of travelers who sat in chairs not unlike this one. Let the storm outside be someone else's problem. You are one of them now, one of that long, quiet line. The fire sighs, the rain falls. Let your body grow heavy now. Feel the weight of your legs where they rest, the warmth of the chair beneath and around you. Feel the easy weight of your arms, your hands open and still. Let your shoulders drop the last little distance they have been holding, that last small tension you carry always without knowing. Let your jaw unclench gently. Let the muscles around your eyes soften. Let your breathing deepen, just slightly, just naturally, the way it deepens when the body finally trusts that everything is alright. Let your feet be warm. They are warm, close to the fire, and you can feel the heat working its way through your socks and into the bones of your feet, the arches of them, the tired heels. Let that warmth travel upward, through your ankles, into your calves. Feel the weight of your legs. They have carried you a long way today. Let them rest. Let your hands be still. They have done what they needed to do. Let them lie open and warm in your lap. Fingers slightly curled, resting, requiring nothing. Let your mind be quiet. It does not have to solve anything tonight. It does not have to plan or remember or prepare. It does not have to be anywhere other than here, in this chair, in this warm and amber room, with the fire and the rain and the ancient stone walls doing their patient work of keeping the storm outside where it belongs. You are in the heather and stone, and the storm is outside, and the fire is warm, and you are safe. Let the sounds carry you now instead of your thoughts. The fire, low and steady in its embers. The rain on the roof, on the old glass, on the stone sill outside. The occasional shift and settle of the building around you. The soft, barely audible breathing of the sleeping dog across the room. These sounds ask nothing of you. They do not need you to understand them or respond to them. They only ask you to let them be there. And they will be there, constant and warm, for as long as you need them. Your breathing is very slow now, in and out, in and out. The fire glows. Outside, the storm moves across the highlands like something ancient and necessary, sweeping down from the north across miles of open moorland, bending the long grasses and the heather, driving the rain in great curtains across the dark hillsides, filling the burns and the rivers with fast cold water that runs away down to the invisible sea. It is enormous and indifferent and magnificent, this storm. But it doesn't touch you. You are held inside the oldest kind of shelter, stone and timber and firelight, a door that closes, a hearth that burns. These things are not complicated. They do not need to be. They have been enough for a very long time. And they are enough tonight. The embers in the hearth glow their slow, patient red. The rain does not stop. It does not need to stop. It can rain all night out there on the hills. and the morning will come anyway, grey and washed and clean, and the road will be quiet, and the hills will be very green, and the burns will run bright and cold with last night's rain, and somewhere a bird will call from the heather, the first sound of morning in a landscape that looks like it has just been made new. But that is morning, and morning is far away. Right now there is only this: the fire, the rain, the warm dark behind your eyes. You are drifting now, very gently, the way a boat drifts when the rope has been loosened and the water is still and there is nothing left to pull against. You are not going anywhere in particular. You are simply moving very slowly away from the shore of waking. The sounds around you are still there: the fire, the rain, the deep and settling breath of the old building. But they are softer now, as though coming from a greater distance, as though the space between you and the waking world has grown wide and soft and full of something like sleep. Let it happen. There is nothing to hold on to here, nothing you need to carry into sleep. Let the thoughts that are still moving, slow as they are, let them slow further. Let them lose their edges. Let them become less like thoughts and more like weather. Present, passing, not yours to manage. The fire breathes, the old building holds. The storm does what storms do, out there on the broad dark hills, in the deep valleys, along the empty roads. It is very far away. You are very close to sleep. And somewhere in this old and warm and amber room, with the rain on the windows, and the fire in the hearth, and the long centuries of shelter soaked into the stones around you, you let go. You sleep. Ambient sounds continue: fire, rain, occasional distant wind, for remainder of audio.